Welcome, all of the same people as the last 2 weeks. That's the best I can come up with. And this is episode 437 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 25th of January, 2022, and featuring Big Finish, Ninth Doctor Adventures, Ravagers, Food Fight, written by Nicholas Briggs and starring Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor and Camilla Bipa as Nova. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and I found out today that the Batman Calzone special from Little Caesars is not as good as last year's Calzone special. With me are Randy Ronson McCulloch
That calzone would probably kill me.
and Alex Fireheart.
Thank God it might actually rain today.
Mad Matt Winchell will not be with us in person as he is working, but he will be with us in spirit as he has left us some notes for the episode review. How is everybody's week going?
Better than last week.
Mm.
Last week, if you recall, I wasn't here because I was actually having difficulty breathing overnight.
That's a bitch.
Yeah, my nose would run and then freeze hard, and then I
Ooh.
couldn't breathe through it, and I would keep waking up, and it would just be this endless cycle of 2 hours of sleep a night at best.
Mm.
And I finally hit the wall, I think, on Friday, and I basically slept Saturday. I had a breakthrough, I think, about midweek, and I was starting to get sleep. I just wasn't making up any sleep. And then Saturday, I'm just like, screw it. I'm not even getting out of bed, and I just slept all day.
Sometimes that's what you got to do.
Oh, how about you two? Anything of interest happen?
Really?
Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody?
Like, pretty much the most interesting thing that happened was that, like, on the weekend at work, I had specifically suggested something to my supervisor because I'm like, well, this would make more sense with everything that's having to be messed around. And then at the end of my shift, this other person had clearly not either gotten the memo or my supervisor hadn't given the whole thing. So rather than putting away the stuff that I'd used, I just left it and fucking left. I like signed out and left. And it was like, thankfully, because I was, once I got home, I called that supervisor and basically, yep, I got away with that. It's like, oh, this other person who's coming in like a half hour or so can just use it. So it's like, oh, there you go. Got away with that.
So, I do have an adventure in cooking. This time it's not mine.
Hmm.
So Aaron decided to make buffalo chicken mac and cheese. I thought, okay, that'll be cool. I love mac and cheese. I love buffalo chicken. And so she makes this over the weekend. She was originally going to make it last weekend, but stuff happened, and cheese will hold for a bit, so will dry pasta. So she held off until this week. And well, she then mentions to me on Monday, "Yeah, I looked at the recipe and a cup and a half of buffalo sauce didn't seem like enough. So I used a bottle and a half."
A bottle and a half.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, continue.
So I'm like, okay. I heat up some of this for lunch on Monday, and I take a bite. I am unable to taste the cheese. I am unable to taste the macaroni. I'm unable to taste the chicken. All I can taste is buffalo sauce. I had some more today, but I had to drown it in ranch dressing.
Mm.
And then it was edible. And this time I did not suffer what I suffered yesterday, which was the night before I had made Cajun shrimp for dinner. And that was already eating a hole in my stomach. The buffalo chicken mac and cheese just worked as reinforcements. So last night I'm like, ugh, Rolaids. Today I'm fine.
Mm. So I think the most interesting thing that's happened to me in the past week is that we've been basically having it where it snows on the weekend, and they don't give a shit on the weekend because it's a college town. So either the mail has trouble getting here, or there were like a few days last week where I didn't get my mail. And I had just ordered a bunch of shit off of Etsy because I just got my financial aid for the semester, and I was like, I need a new suit for next month. Uh, so I get a note on Tuesday when I finally checked my mail of last week, and it was like, oh, there are 5 packages that would not fit in your mailbox. So I'm like, okay, maybe they'll come tomorrow. And then I wait
Oh.
and wait, and then they never come. I went to the post office yesterday about it. They're like, well, if you call us between 8 and 9 a.m., you can talk to a supervisor. Otherwise, maybe we'll have someone call you. I'm getting ready to leave for the class that I teach today, and I just hear beep, beep, beep outside my door. Apparently, they just brought all of those packages, skipped the mailbox, and brought them all to my door today. I was like, okay, that was nice.
We're having deep freeze here.
Hmm.
Wind chills down to negative 30 degrees tonight.
Oh yeah, we have
Whoa.
not been having anything close to that.
Oh yeah, it's and my friend Sammy, who lives in Kent in England, is talking to me, and it's like, what is that in Celsius? And I'm looking, it's like, yeah, that's even colder. That's 30. That's negative 32.
So the closest we're getting before wind chill is 9, but the we barely get wind in Athens
Oh,
unless it's like the only time we get wind is if it's about to rain. So the wind chill is probably negligible.
we get
Oh, actually,
wicked
yeah.
wind here.
Wind chill, let me see. In the next day or two, the highest the wind is expected to go is 7 miles an hour.
Yeah, no,
I'm pretty sure.
we get wicked wind here.
I I haven't followed the wind religiously, but I'm sure 7 miles an hour is not that much.
Oh no, it's nothing.
But that's the most wind we're expected to get anytime soon. That's like the high point. Most of it's like 2 miles an hour, 1 mile an hour.
Okay. So the National Weather Service has issued a wind chill advisory from midnight till noon. Very cold wind chills between 20 and 30 degrees below zero. Give me how much the winds are actually going to be. And you're not going to do that. Joy. How about a daily forecast? No. Oh, I really miss the old forecasts. Right now it's 9 degrees. Negative 9. And it says the wind speed's 5 miles an hour, so that drops at 3. So you're 7, probably 4.
Mm.
But we're looking at,
So we're still staying above 0 Fahrenheit, even with the worst wind chill we get.
Yeah, and we're down below because this is Wisconsin and the weather fucking hates us.
Mm-hmm. Is that just that it's flatter there, or is it to do with the lake?
No, we pretty much get this across the state.
Mm.
It's we're a little bit higher latitude, and
And you're farther from the Appalachians.
and we get those cold winds down from Canada.
Mm.
So yeah. So this is the kind of sit your butt down, curl up with a blanket, and watch TV weather.
Alex, based on what you've mentioned in the past few weeks, looking to trade weather with anyone?
It's actually nice and cool today, so
Oh, okay. Because
got
I
lucky
think you
there.
mentioned hoping it would rain, so I was like, oh, maybe it's burning there right now. I don't know.
Oh, it's like lightly spitting,
Mhm.
but it hasn't full blown rained yet. It's actually been like a bit nicer lately because we started getting rain here and there again. It's just that like for a week or two there was just none.
Mm.
So it was just like extremely fucking hot, and I was like, oh fuck this. Like you know, I've lived here my whole life. I can never, my body will absolutely never get used to this heat.
Mm.
um I much prefer having to warm up during winter than having to cool down during summer.
I feel you. That's why I think my ideal place to live, if if I could choose anywhere to go to school and like what degree I had wasn't an issue, would probably be somewhere like Toronto.
Hmm.
But then again, I've never lived in Canada. There might be something about the culture I don't know that drives me crazy. But climate wise, a relatively normal part of Canada sounds very nice.
Hmm.
Ah, relatively normal.
As in, not like the frozen wastes that are like miles away from civilization, but like the actual urban areas. The parts where there are people of Canada.
That's the entire country of Canada. You just cross the border, immediately the snows come down, you're under 5 feet of snow in June. A Mountie comes by and a moose going, "What's up with you, buddy?" And
All right. So I think we've talked enough about the weather. We can
and
move
those of
on
you
to tonight's
offended by
show.
my depiction of Canada,
Oh, blow me. I'm sure the Canadians are the first ones laughing.
I'm hoping.
I mean, you didn't say sorry or a boot once. Now they might be offended at me, but I can live with it.
I didn't even say A, and that's actually a thing. Don't deny it, Canada. I've heard you speak. Okay. So, on tonight's show, we've got some birthdays, a bit of news. We don't have any geek talk, which is amazing for all of us. Probably means it's going to be a short show tonight. I've got a review of Shame, though it's going to be a shameful review of Shame.
I've got a rumor mill to tackle.
All right. And then our episode summary, our review, our final thoughts, and our ratings. So, give me a moment to let my nose get under control.
Mm.
And we will go to birthdays. Oh, that's the other thing. Cold weather makes winter colds worse. All right, we've got three birthdays. The first birthday is on January 20th and is the birthday of 4th Doctor Tom Baker, shown here on the left. If you couldn't figure that out, you might need glasses. He was the Doctor from 1971 to 81, and he turned 88. Which, good going, Tom. I think that's the oldest we've ever had a Doctor.
And some people are clamoring for him to replace Jodie Whittaker because that's just the point of the news cycle we're at right now.
I think he's far too old to be doing that. All right. So, next two birthdays are on the 22nd, and the first one is the birthday of Tommy Knight, who played Luke, the genius boy, in Sarah Jane Adventures. He turned 29, which means, wow, it's been a while since Sarah Jane Adventures. The next is another Doctor birthday, albeit a posthumous one, and that is John Hurt, who of course played the War Doctor in the 2013 50th anniversary special, and was continuing the role for Big Finish when he unfortunately died. He would have been 82, but died in 2017 at the age of 77. So, happy birthday, Tom, Tommy, and John.
Now is also a good time to mention that we did not cover this last week because he wasn't here and there was no point. But on January 13, Randy Ronson McCulloch turned.
What did I turn? I'm old. I'm old. I'm liable to forget. No, I turned 46.
Yeah.
I'm. Yeah. I've got 4 years left until I'm 50.
Did you get anything other than sick as far as celebration goes?
We did manage to get my traditional birthday dinner,
No, that's nice.
which is steak. Um, we ordered out from my actually we it was a comedy of errors because we were going to order delivery, but then Aaron got lazy and it's like, I don't want to. Can we just, or we were going to order pickup, but Aaron got lazy and it's like, no, I don't want to. Can we order delivery instead? So then we tried to order from Outback, but they were like, due to a situation, we cannot fulfill any orders tonight. And by the time we figured that out, Aaron was so riled up, it's like, nah, I'm going to go pick it up anyway. So she ordered pickup from the steakhouse I prefer. And so I had steak, fries, steamed broccoli, and mushrooms for my steak.
Sounds
Really good, but I was full of steak. Also, we made the mistake of each of us ordering an appetizer, and they were huge. So I ordered onion petals. Aaron ordered stuffed mushrooms. So it was like, Aaron's like, wow, there's like 14 sides there.
Lunch the next day.
Not for me. I ate it all. And then because Longhorn didn't have any desserts that were particularly tripping my trigger that night, I ordered a bowl, or not a bowl, a cup of their shrimp and lobster chowder. So I ate all of that, and then proceeded to lie on my bed for like the rest of the night, going, too full. And now, of course, it's like a week later, and I'm like, steak? I love steak. I'm a steak person. I would love living in Texas for the sole purpose of steak. Anyway, from birthdays, we go to lost stories. And we have had a death. It is Spencer Chapman, who was a production assistant back in the early days. He worked on the Dalek invasion of Earth. He took over after the original designer of the Daleks, Raymond Cusick, decided not to come back for the sequel, leaving him to basically pick up the reins. So any changes to the Daleks for the second serial was Chapman's job.
Ah.
He also helped with set design, and then that includes dressing up the locations in central London to look like post-apocalyptic London. He would return back a few months later on the Space Museum before going into other BBC shows such as The Forsyth Saga, Vanity Fair, Roads to Freedom, Zed Cars, Roadshow Disco, Private Schultz, Alice in Wonderland, and anything more would be greedy.
Yeah, I'm amused by this quote from him on Doctor Who News. He designed a Daleks logo for the serial, and he went around Trafalgar Square sticking it on things until the police stopped him. And then he said he would wipe it off if they let them film the episode first.
Yep. Could you imagine that? Marking up Trafalgar Square for this thing and just having the Bobby come back and just kind of tap you on the shoulder? What's all this then?
At least he's not writing Romans Go Home.
Yeah, and at least he had a valid excuse. Yes, we've reserved this for filming for, yada yada yada. Yeah, we're just doing some mock-ups. We'll wipe it down and clean it up when we're done. Anyway, I don't know much more details on it. It was very hard to find information on this person, as he's behind the scenes instead of in front of the camera. But he will be missed. He did live to 84, which is a good run. Anyway, in other news, the BBC announced the Season 22 box set for Blu-ray, which, if you remember, Season 22 was Colin Baker's first full season. So that was the one that gave us Attack of the Cybermen, Vengeance on Varos, Revelation of the Daleks. Not a big deal, but what was a big deal is the announcement trailer. As you know, the BBC has been reaching out to the old companions and doing these dramatic little add-on bits to these trailers. This one in particular was mostly about Perry, and it actually slightly continued the story and gave it a more interesting conclusion.
What I found funny was that it was a sequel to a season 23 story, but
Yeah, well, I mean, you're dealing with Perry, you have to deal with the fact that, that's where she ended up.
right.
I thought the production on this one was actually pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So I thought this was kind of cool. And can I just say that Nicola Bryant has aged really well?
I think all the
Unlike,
companions have.
not all of the companions.
Yeah.
I look at a few of them and they're like, wow, they've kind of gone to hell. But Nicola Bryant in particular looks like maybe she's 10 years older than when she did this. And then you think about it and realize, fuck, that was 40 years ago.
Yep.
So it's just a very nice little story. I suggest anybody that ever liked Perry and thought that her ending in The Trial of a Time Lord was a bit abrupt, watch this trailer to, get a little more closure. All right. Um, Actually, I think that's all the news, because I think the Big Finish news here was one you guys had last week. Unless you...
Nope. The Matthew Waterhouse we did not.
Oh, you missed something last week. Okay. So, the big finish out last week that wasn't mentioned is an audio novel called Watchers, which is both written and read by Matthew Waterhouse. It also features Nicholas Briggs as the Daleks. This is an audio novel rather than an audio drama, so it's going to be him basically reading and narrating it. Take that or leave it as you will. And that's all the news we have.
All right. So it brings us to the rumor mill. And headlines have been popping up this week about a mysterious insider who allegedly claimed that Jodie Whittaker would be denied a regeneration because of her low ratings. This seemed a bit ridiculous to me, considering that Jodie's last scenes had already been filmed, and her final episode is meant to be part of the BBC centenary celebration. So, kind of a big deal. The alleged reasoning is to give more separation between the new Doctor and Jodie Whittaker. But if you want people to stop thinking about the old Doctor, you need a regeneration scene. So I followed these articles to the source that they were citing, which was The Sun, which I'm pretty sure is deep into tabloid territory, if I'm not mistaken. Based on their article, the only claim that they're actually making is that Jodie Whittaker may not be returning for the 60th anniversary special to show both sides of the regeneration into the new Doctor in one episode. Sort of like how Peter Capaldi didn't appear in The Woman Who Fell to Earth, which had nothing to do with ratings. It was just part of, the sequence of filming and events.
Well,
Yeah.
so let me nip this in the bud, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Jodie Whittaker has filmed a regeneration scene. That means that she has done her half of the regeneration.
Right.
It is going to... now, at worst, what we may get is a second Doctor-esque regeneration where Jodie regenerates and we don't see the conclusion, and then we see a new Doctor step out of the TARDIS, what have you.
Right.
And the only reason for that is not because of this, but because of the production issues of switching to a new production house.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, Doctor Who under Russell T is going to be done by Bad Wolf Studios. And the old TARDIS set has been stricken.
Yeah.
So they might not have the ability to film the old actor in the TARDIS set and fill in the blanks.
Right.
Now they might be able to do some CG magic and do it anyway. Or the regeneration may actually occur outdoors for once. It's been a while, folks. In which case they just need access to the same location for the shooting.
Yeah. I mean, God, it would be nice to have some change in the generation.
At this point, we have no idea if Jodie Whittaker is going to be anywhere near Cardiff when they actually start production on the new season.
And, I mean, if they needed her for a touch-up or something, she can get called down there. I mean, you got to remember, Britain's only about the size of the state of Wisconsin.
Assuming she's not filming something in Hollywood or something at the time.
Yeah, probably not going to be right away. It took Matt Smith a couple of years before his career got him across the pond. Oddly enough, it seems companions have less time doing that. But I'm sure they'll be able to figure out something. Russell T is already working with Chibnall, at least on the transition work. So he must have some plan in mind.
Yeah.
Even though they have yet to find the new actor who's going to be the Doctor.
Right. And the easiest way to nip this in the bud is even though they fired Colin Baker, the only reason he didn't come back for regeneration is because he didn't want to. They
Correct.
wanted him to come back for a regeneration, but he told them to fuck off.
Pretty much, yes. So that's why we got Sylvester McCoy in a Colin Baker wig.
Yeah. So like if they were willing to get him back even just for regeneration, even after firing him, I'm pretty sure there's gonna be no issue
I mean,
having Jodie have
The
a
only
regeneration.
unless it doesn't serve the story, like it didn't serve the story and the woman who fell to Earth, it wouldn't have made sense to have a Peter
Yeah.
Capaldi scene in that episode.
well,
Right.
there shouldn't have been a Peter Capaldi scene in that episode, Bill. The regeneration happened entirely in the Christmas special before that.
Right.
Mm.
You actually saw Capaldi, have his big goodbye speech, regenerate, and you got to see Jodie Whittaker for a good minute.
Mm.
Oh, did we? I forgot that
Yes.
part then.
She looks at herself,
Yeah.
goes brilliant, pushes the blow up the TARDIS button, which blew up the TARDIS, and then she gets sucked out into the atmosphere.
Mm.
Why do they even have a blow up the TARDIS button?
I don't know, but she reaches down, she pushes the button, and the TARDIS starts blowing up. She pushes the big red button that should never, ever, ever be pressed.
Yeah, that's one episode that I have. Actually, yeah, I haven't rewatched a lot of those episodes.
I have rewatched the
since-
Capaldi regeneration scene about 150 times.
Ever since Doctor Who stopped being on Netflix, where it was a very convenient rewatch. And yeah.
No, I mean the Capaldi regeneration scene's on YouTube, so I've watched it 150 times.
Ah.
Mm.
It is one of the great speeches of Doctor Who. So
Mm. I mean,
that
generally just
and the
thinking
fact that
about
they're playing the shepherd's boy during the regeneration, which is one of Murray Gold's best bits. I'm not saying it's his best bit;
Mhm.
it's one of his best bits.
Mm.
So is I Am the Doctor. That's one of his greatest ones too.
Mm.
You could probably get, a list of top 10 Murray Gold scores, and those would be probably in the top 5. This is Gallifrey would probably be in there too.
Okay, but that name, it always makes me think Nightmare Before Nightmare Before Christmas. This is Gallifrey. This is Gallifrey. Like, that's not the song,
No, it's not.
but the title
And that's
makes me think
your
it
own
is.
problem. You just need to figure that one out. Okay. So this story is basically a bunch of hooey invented by, it looks like, the American tabloids. It's bad enough the British is making up their own bullshit about
I
Doctor
thought
Who.
the Sun was British.
It
no?
says the U.S. Sun, if you look at the article at the top.
Oh, I did not realize that. I didn't even realize there was a U.S. Sun.
Yes, there is. I've seen it in the grocery store.
Got you.
Right next to the Weekly World News talking about Batboy. Back when there was a Weekly World News. But, so yeah, it's bad enough the British are, blowing up my news feeds every 2 hours with somebody new who they predict is going to be the next Doctor. Now we've got us Americans going, oh yeah, she's not even going to get a regeneration scene. At one point, I'm thrilled as punch at the global newsworthiness of this. At the same time, you tabloids can go suck an egg.
Yes.
Yeah. Of course, the Sun is owned by Rupert Murdoch, so I shouldn't be really surprised both either that this happened, but also that there's a US version of the Sun as well.
Okay, so yeah, I guess that's enough airtime for that particular story.
Yes, please. Thank you. Yes, please and thank you.
So now we move
Uh,
to a review of Shame.
all right. Well, I'm just gonna put up the generic title card at this point since I don't have the title card for last week's. Oh, okay. So I did miss last week's. I caught up on it this week. What can I say about last week's episode? What I liked. It did seem to connect well between the last one and this one. Um, what I disliked, the second part seemed to run on a bit, and all the voices started to get samey. I mean, other than Eccleston, you got Eccleston, and then you got this. All the vocal distortion was starting to annoy me too.
Mm.
Where you suddenly would have Eccleston being muted and in the background when you don't have a visual reference and all you have is the audio cue.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm.
really hard to focus on.
Especially when you don't really know what's going on or where this fits in chronologically.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, favorite scene, I think, is when Nova first runs into the drones, as I think they become to be called,
Mm-hmm.
and
So
just
the
the
very first scene.
yes, just the whole confusion over what they're doing, which nearly winds up getting her brain sucked out. Yeah. Least favorite scene, I think, was the last bit before the end. The missiles, they do not, or the energy, it does nothing
Mm.
because saw it coming.
Yeah.
It just was, it's like that's pretty much what I predicted. Like half this before, we could have cut this out, and I would have known what was going on. Final thought. It still managed to be as confusing as the first part, which wasn't as good. And it just was failing to hold my interest. The first part of it did okay. The second part, I was just losing interest.
Mm.
All right.
All right, so time for the summary.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me open up a
Yep.
stopwatch. Stopwatch. Oh. You know, I used to make fun of Aaron for having light up keys. Now I realize how completely and totally useful they are. All right, whose turn is it to do the summary? Because I know it's not me.
It's mine.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
The Doctor tries to latch on to Nova's DNA to get back to the spot from the previous episode with the drones. Instead, the TARDIS latches onto the wrong DNA, which brings him to Lieutenant Faraday, which apparently TARDIS spells lieutenant. The second try brings him to Captain Halloran and Marcus Gallius. We now have a full set of three Stooges, which the Doctor assigns Nova to babysit while he goes for try 3. The Doctor finally makes it to his target, pulling the prime drone out of Hammer space and instructing it to reprogram the rest of the drones. They load the drones onto the TARDIS and go to the Sphere of Freedom shortly after the Doctor's original escape, where the drones were supposed to follow the Doctor out of the TARDIS, but instead Nova and the Three Stooges do. Audrey says she can't trust the Doctor yet and orders the Doctor captured and sedated. When the Doctor awakens, Nova and the Three Stooges are off somewhere working on a plan to free him, and Audrey is afraid to tell the Doctor anything because she's afraid of causing a paradox. Nova makes it to the TARDIS and tries to persuade the drones to follow her before they explain that they were programmed to respond to her voice the whole time. The drones come out and eat the time particles, At which point, Audrey reveals that the time particles aren't the cause of the time eddies, but they're actually the mechanism by which they're kept under control. The Doctor is then swallowed by a time eddy, and he uses the time node, we get it, you're from time, and becomes that shadow that's been stalking Audrey for the past episode and a half. The Doctor gets pulled in by the Ravagers as the node dies, and they seem to confirm Audrey's theory that they live off of other beings' fear. This tips the Doctor off to the fact that the TARDIS key in his pocket is channeling TARDIS energy, which translated the Ravagers for him. He then uses that energy to charge the node. The node brings the Doctor back to his first meeting with Nova. This leads the Doctor to Audrey, and he reveals that he took a reading somehow and realized it was the Ravagers' own fear that they lived off of. The Doctor tells Audrey to set things up to basically keep the Ravagers entertained by the game for all of eternity, and also to, no longer have slaves. The end.
All right. You did that in 2 minutes, 37 seconds. Pretty much a straight linear ending. And so now we're going to go to what we liked about the episode, or the audio. And let's go ahead and hear Matt's.
Okay, so Matt said that his what he liked was there was a satisfying ending. It was a bit time wavy and the timeline folding back on itself to end the main issue of the story. But otherwise satisfying ending. And I'm sure we're going to hear more about the ending from Rand later on in the review.
Oh yeah. Okay.
This was foreshadowed when we announced that Nicholas Briggs wrote the trilogy 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mentioned it very audibly. Okay. So, Bill, what did you like?
Bill already, and I spent all my time writing summary notes and none writing review notes.
Well, it was going to be you or Alex, and I just rolled, and it was you.
So I guess I'm just going to say, despite the character probably being superfluous, it was entertaining as all hell listening to Dan Starkey being a Roman not Centauran who was basically a Centauran anyway. It was just fun to listen to, and it usually made me laugh, especially when he charged out of the TARDIS and almost got lost in the fucking time vortex.
Dan Starkey does great comic relief. Unfortunately, it does make him a bit of a one-trick pony.
Yeah, I was about 10 minutes into this. I was like, wait a second. He's basically written as a Centauran here.
He's basically Strax as a Roman.
Yes. Except, yeah.
At least he wasn't using all the Strax go-to lines. Because, yeah.
And he also wasn't addicted to chocolate.
Yep. Okay, so, Alex, what did you like about the episode?
I guess kind of this was sort of the thing that I brought up last time, but I guess the fact that the Doctor is once again in this also shown as fallible, because like you finally think he's got it right, and then it's like, nope, you fucked up again. So like he fucks up twice overall in this entire thing when he thinks he's got it fixed, and it's fucking everything up, so he has to keep trying, and it's essentially third time lucky that he gets it right.
Yep. Well, that's the Doctor for you. So, I liked Nova. I honestly did. I liked the fact that at the end they revealed that she knew she was so knowledgeable about all of this because she was a freaking sci-fi geek. Interesting note. Did you hear what her favorite series was?
Yeah,
Professor
Professor
X.
X. Yeah.
You know what Professor X is, don't you? It is the in-canon um, version of Doctor Who.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, like that was the immediate thing that came. Like aside from Charles Xavier, I was also thinking, oh, I get it, Professor X instead of Doctor Who.
yes, it's since Doctor Who can't be the main character in his own series on TV, um, in the Doctor Who universe, the BBC shows on Saturdays from 1963 to 1989 is Professor X, and apparently it kept going, whereas Doctor Who didn't.
So are you just messing with the Google Doc for fun? 'Cause
No,
it's
I
very
was trying to get rid of the
pathetic.
colored numbers.
Ah.
They were annoying me.
I
Okay,
like
so
watching things go up and down.
what we disliked about the episode, and this is where you're going to hear me rant when we get to mine. So I will
All
let
right.
Matt.
So Matt says, so Phantom Doctor was somehow a time eddy with Device Doctor, just peeking around a woman's timeline to find out how everything worked. So if the eddy didn't get him in time, would he have even saved the day? Very fortunate for the plot that it did happen.
Yeah.
I mean, yes and no. It was kind of predestined to happen, so it was sort of a Moffat loop in that case. Because
Hmm.
Audrey knew the whole time that it had happened. She just didn't know how.
Hmm.
Okay,
All right.
Bill, how about
So that
yours?
brings it to me. And I'm going to say, I do not think there was enough character to go around for the Three Stooges.
Hmm.
Captain Halloran, to this point, I could not tell you. Between Captain Halloran and Lieutenant Faraday, between the two of them, they don't quite have enough personality for one person. Marcus Aurelius Gallius, no notes there. He's fine as he is. Nova, she works. But then you add in these extra two bodies in the TARDIS, and there's just not enough personality left to go around.
The problem is
At
they're the
least the way it's
same
written.
archetype about what, 5 years apart?
Well, they come from the same time zone. It's basically a superior and his lieutenant, but they're not very different from each
Yeah, they,
other.
they didn't need both. They only needed one.
It's
Yeah.
just like how Sergeant Benton, he was fun. Like it was, he had facial expressions and everything, but he didn't have a ton of character in the original series
Oh,
either.
he did.
Hmm.
It's just
He
very
had
rare he
some,
got to show it.
right? Yeah, it wasn't enough for like every episode, I don't think. And
No.
Hmm.
but even this, like for the role that they play in this episode, especially both returning to the plot after being absent, you would think they'd be a bit more different and a bit more lively in order to justify being returning characters, and I don't think they really they really fill that role.
Not really.
Hmm.
Okay. Alex?
Um. Let's see. Basically, I'm just trying to think of, is there one that is probably not just going to be the rant that Randy's going to go on anyway. um.
You
So.
can just hear it boiling, can't you?
um. Oh. Honestly, yeah, I'll just pass because I don't want to take it, and I think that's all I've really got as far as like major things that I can think of,
Okay.
given what I assume is coming. So.
Okay. So, I've talked many times on this podcast about how you can identify a writer by his styles or her styles. If you've seen enough episodes written by the same person, you'll notice there's things they frequently add to their writing. Moffat, for instance, loves the bootstrap paradox or the Moffat loop. He loves body horror. Well, one of the things we've noticed after seeing many Big Finish audios written by Nick Briggs is he loves a reset button. To the point that I don't remember any particular audio that of his that didn't end in a reset button. So the second I heard about this audio, I knew it was ending in a reset button. And sure enough, I was right. Literally, it resets the entire world so that nothing ever happens, or that none of what we just went through ever happened. Well, that basically means you've just wasted however much time you've been watching, reading, or listening to this story. It is one of the things that pisses me off about Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, because that one has a literal reset button.
Yeah. This isn't quite as literal, but the function is the same.
Yeah, it's not as literal, but it's still the same. You reset the universe, so it stopped. I mean, that's the problem that pissed people off about the Series 3 ending. You know, where the Master fucked over the world, and then the Doctor just suddenly undoes it all. And people were like, because of that. It's something that a lot of people have issues with, including myself.
Yeah,
And
every time I come up with something, I see something new by Briggs, and was like, okay, you know, he's had years to develop as a writer since the last thing I've listened to from him. Maybe he's moved beyond that trope. And this is pretty recent, and he doesn't seem to have moved beyond that trope.
no, he hasn't. And that's when people keep saying, make Nicholas Briggs the showrunner for Doctor Who. I'm like, no! Because that would be every freaking series finale.
Right.
He writes himself. For me, it's lazy writing. Because you write yourself into a position where that's the only way you can fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And
That said, there were definitely moments where I thought that's how Flux was going to end, because it really seemed like they wrote themselves into that kind of corner.
and that's what they did in Series 3, is they wrote themselves into a corner where that was the only way they could fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
This is kind of like weird, especially because like the Nova that he's possibly going to be traveling with, I guess, is not the Nova that he spent the story with. So
yep.
there's less connection there.
Yeah, it's one of these things that doesn't it makes things weird. I mean, we had that weirdness with Clara. You know, the Clara we met was not the Clara we originally met, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
And now suddenly, now you've got this Nova who's not the same Nova because of shenanigans. It's, for me, like I said, it just seems like bullshit lazy writing. It's just annoying to me. I come out of it going, can I get my time back?
Especially because it's like, I feel like it wouldn't even be as bad if this wasn't essentially the length of a 3-part New Who story. Because like, that when I listened to this as a whole yesterday, the thing that I was listening to it on said that the runtime was about 2 hours. So that's a lot of time to invest for something to basically just be reset.
Yep. I mean, if I spent time playing a video game and that was the solution, it never happened, I would be freaking pissed off.
So you're not a fan of the U.S. Super Mario Bros. 2?
No. Although that one, the solution is it was just a dream. The only time I
Right.
ever liked that particular trope was Zelda 4. Because that
And its
was,
remake?
well, I mean, the Link, yeah, the Link's Awakening. And I like that one because they leave it ambiguous to how much of it was really a dream.
Mm.
And it's enough of a world of magic where, there might have been an actual dream world with actual living things that only exist in a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So that doesn't bother me so much, but the reset button just has. I've seen it so much that the first time I saw it, I might have thought, hey, interesting. But that was, 100 versions of the same story ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why if we ever do Sirens of Time, it'll be interesting because that was really the first reset button of that nature I had seen in a Doctor Who story. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, I'm not so sure how I feel about the ending, but at least it's something original. And of course that was Big Finish's first Doctor Who story. But they've done it a few times now, and that might be a generous way to
A
put it.
few dozen times, yeah.
Yeah.
It's thin, guys. It's just thin now.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, it
Ah,
feels like the more interesting thing is to trick you into thinking that's what's going to happen, and then no, there actually are long-lasting consequences.
yeah. Okay. Um.
Matt's best scene?
Yep.
He says the Roman has a plan, and lo and behold, sometimes the old plans are always the best ones. I mean, the Marcus's plan was to kind of kill everybody on the sphere of freedom, which I guess it wouldn't have mattered because they deleted that whole timeline anyway.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
All right.
so it's me.
Yes.
So I'm going to say the scene of Nova and the drones, where Nova realized that the Doctor had actually trusted her. That was a big character moment. First of all, they had actually kind of foreshadowed it because the Doctor had expected Nova to bring the drones along, but Nova thought only the Doctor could do it. And also just the fact that it was the first time she had ever experienced anything like that as a person slash character. So it was a big moment for her in that way, which has now been deleted and never happened. But that's neither here nor there.
All right. Alex.
I was wondering if I could think of anything else, but I can't, so I'm just going to go with one that I guess is an obvious choice, but fuck it. The
Not too
doctor
many people
saying
behind you.
uh yeah, the scene where the Ninth Doctor finally says "fantastic" again, because fuck me, that hit me a lot more. That hit me in the gut, and I'm just like, whoa! I did not expect to get emotional over hearing Christopher Eccleston saying "fantastic" again.
I got nostalgic. And I think
Yeah.
Chris Eccleston got a bit nostalgic too.
Yeah.
Yes.
As much as that part of his life was shit, it's like, I think that's the point where it just kind of, it was like putting the old coat on.
Mm.
Oh. So I think mine was the point that at the end where he's finally put it all together and coming up with the solution, and it just felt, because he had that excited energy that Eccleston used to have right at the end when he
Mm,
had the solution,
Mhm.
and it felt like the end of an old classic first series episode.
mm.
All right, least favorite scene.
All right. So Matt said, really, Audrey couldn't tell the doctor anything. He was already on the right path. How would her saying anything have destroyed things more than they already were? The doctor was making the same
Yeah.
argument.
Yeah.
Although I guess it might have stopped him from actually. No, it wouldn't have, because he got sucked into a time eddy, and that she wouldn't have stopped that
Yeah.
from happening. So
Mm. Unless it was that he had to be sucked into that exact time, though.
right,
Who knows?
yeah, I guess maybe she was afraid that if she told him everything, he never would have gone through and stalked her for her entire life.
Which, by the way, is
uh,
just creepy.
mm,
Creepy. This isn't the first time the Doctor's been creepy. Well, technically, if you go chronologically, yes, it is.
Right, but yeah, this is the same shit he did with Clara.
Yep.
yeah.
It hasn't gotten any better.
Hmm. We show up on Easter, and the doctor's like, "Oh yeah, while you were sleeping, I went to you when you were a baby and took photos of you to Yaz or something."
Here's the first time you use the toilet on your own.
I did not need that image.
Okay.
uh,
So I'm going to say, where the fuck did Cynthia come from? And I know Cynthia is just a name that they gave the Prime Droid, but they followed Nova's DNA to the exact scene where she met the drones, but they already had a drone in the TARDIS when that happened that hadn't been in the previous episode. So where did it come from?
yeah, I think it's supposed to be a between episodes thing, but I don't know.
Like they couldn't even
That's the
manage to
only thing
find
that
the
I
right
could.
time zone until that moment. So what the hell?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's just that's a little loose in my head too. Alex?
Mm. Um, I'm gonna just because it seemed like, wow, that's super convenient. The fact that the TARDIS was able to, like, when he's like stuck with the Ravagers, and then the TARDIS somehow manages to pull him out of that back through the time eddy or whatever into the TARDIS. I'm like, what?
The power of plot.
How? Yeah, like how does that work? I mean, I get the TARDIS is supposed to be like somewhat sentient, but like, really? That's getting a bit fanficky.
It is. It felt a little um it felt a little out there.
Hmm.
Um I think that whole bit with the Ravagers for me is my least favorite scene, because they make them sound so sweet and
Yeah. Yeah, like it seems like it's one of those things where they're going for like, oh, a more innocent voice is creepier somehow, and it's like the descriptions of it and the noises you hear before are just like you know, a bunch of wailing fucking ghouls or something, and then you get one that actually can talk somehow, and it's like a kid.
Yeah,
It's like,
the images they made of the Ravagers, those mouths do not look like that sound would come out of their mouths, even ignoring the
yeah,
TARDIS translation, because obviously it wasn't
mm,
English that came out of their mouths, but
yeah,
that doesn't sound like what their voice would be.
mm, yeah. Like,
Yeah,
it's
you would
one of
think.
those things where the more cliche option was the better option of just
Yeah.
like very gravelly voice. Uh, well,
It just hit me wrong.
mm,
All
Unless
right.
the person who made the images was completely independent of the audio, which I could kind of understand. Um, but even still, yeah, I could see the argument, but then that might be one of those subversions that they've used a little too much in the Big Finish studio.
mm.
Okay. So, are we down to our final thoughts?
I think we are. Unless we
Mm.
had any comments about Christopher Eccleston's first kind of full story back in the saddle after over a decade. I'm not sure if we've covered all of our thoughts already.
Uh,
I think I had comments to say about that back in the first one, so I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
mm.
All right. So, Matt's final thoughts. He said the voice cast was good, the plot was nice and self contained, and most of it came to a very happy end. Lots of hand waving on how they got there, and reset button most of the bad stuff, but otherwise a fun story.
All right.
So, what I'll say is I feel like I liked the a lot of the first episode, and then it did kind of go downhill as it just became less coherent over time. Which is disappointing because Nicholas Briggs is a veteran audio writer. But it's very clear he got his start writing fan fiction, and nobody has ever been his boss ever since then. I think. In terms of he hasn't really gotten notes that changed his craft all that much. Just based on
mm.
all the things we've been talking about. Um, it's not a terrible story, but there's definitely a lot of flaws in it. It's definitely fun at times. I enjoyed the character of Nova. The performances were definitely part of that as well. I also am kind of, or oh, actually, two things I wanted to mention. One is that the whole thing about oh you're a nerd that scene is weird specifically because the 10th Doctor needed Martha to explain what a sci-fi geek was, or sorry, what a science geek was. So if he needed Martha to explain what a science geek was, then how is he going to be like, oh, you're a sci-fi nerd? Like, you would think that those bits of information would come together.
Either that,
um
or he knows
Mm.
nerd but doesn't know geek.
Right. Like, I guess yeah. It just seems a little off, but it's not a huge thing. And the other one is the Ravagers' hunger is satisfied by experiencing their own fear. That's one of those, like, the laws of thermodynamics would like a word with you situations. And it's that in particular is not very satisfying of a conclusion. In addition to the whole reset button aspect of it, and it definitely does not leave me feeling like this story had a strong ending in any way. And
Mm.
that's about it for my final thoughts.
All right. Alex?
Yeah, this is one where it's like, uh, in hindsight, listening to the whole thing yesterday, it was very much like I don't know, maybe it's just me, but there were some bits where if I tuned out for even slightly because I was focused on reading something or whatever at the time I was listening to it, suddenly I'd be like, wait, what's going on now? Sort of a thing. Like this was a bit like this final bit was a bit more okay, everything's coming together anyway. But like the middle bit and bits of the first one are like, God, this is kind of so again, like so much of this seems superfluous to where at best, if this was like an actual made for TV story, it would be like a two-parter at best, not a three. And I as I brought up like previously, I feel like the first bit would just be told entirely linearly. Or again, it's one of those weird things where there are ideas in this that would have been interesting as their own story, like the idea of Romans showing up in the middle of, London in the 50s. It's like, okay, that could be its own one-off episode. Like, but you cram all, like, I guess it's just it. There's too many ideas going on at the same time that it's like, okay, it'd be nice if this was just focusing on one thing and following that through to the end instead of all this kind of superfluous ultimately side stuff. Because like, what do those three guys really ultimately contribute to the plot?
Not
Not
much.
much.
Adding comic
Yeah,
relief.
pretty much. So it's just like, either make that the stuff with the Romans and the British soldiers its own thing, um or something like I can follow the war games and that shit jumps around a lot. But
Hmm.
that's also following the one plot ultimately. So
It all
there's just
ties
jumping
together,
around. Yeah.
and
Whereas
there's
this
no
is
there's
like,
no tying here. It's like a loose knot.
yeah,
It's
it's a
they cut the knot at the end instead of tying it.
Oh, so they use the Gordian knot.
Yes.
yeah, it's like the acting the acting for the most part is good, although it's funny because I realized when listening to the little bit of credits at the end that like at least one person does like multiple side voices in this.
That's not unusual.
Yeah, which was like, oh, okay. Um but yeah, I don't actually now that I think about it, I think there wasn't really any acting that really bugged me. But yeah, it's just Christopher Eccleston does get into the swing of things by the end, which is the main kind of thing that I'm here for anyway. Um, I mean, I did joke when we covered the first bit that he sounded a bit like Paul McGann, but I guess that is just a matter of getting used to the new format because I don't know if he's done audio stuff at all, let alone Doctor Who. He obviously hadn't done Doctor Who stuff, but I don't know if he'd done too much audio work before this.
I don't remember
And
him doing
specifically
voice
having
acting.
and specifically having to get into this character again after so long, and with all the health issues he had and all that, the fact that he was able to get back into the swing of it was generally nice to see. But yeah, I am honestly more prepared for when we get to volume 2 eventually, because that'll all be one off that are just thematically connected rather than one long story.
From what I can tell, no, he has never done voice acting before.
Huh. Well, yeah, that might not have helped, at least to start with, having to get used to that.
He's probably done things where like he had to redo a voiceover or like the character's
Mm.
internal monologue
Oh,
for a movie or something, but that's a very small scale.
he had done radio before.
Ah,
Nah.
And knowing
Quite
Doctor
a
actors, it was
bit of
probably
radio.
Hamlet.
No, he has a whole list.
Oh, it's not all Shakespeare.
Nope. In fact, I don't think I see Shakespeare on here at all.
Oh,
Oh.
Was doing the Iliad. But yeah. Did a version of 1984 where he played the protagonist. Did 44 episode radio series, so yeah, he's done quite a bit of radio acting. But even that's probably a little different from audio dramas.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the combination of that and trying to get back into a TV role.
yeah, a role that he hadn't done in over a decade.
Yeah.
But was he being directed by a Dalek? Probably not. Probably not, because there are no Daleks in the story. But
I mean, he was being directed by Briggs. That's close enough. He pretty much just walks around with that ringtone modulator on his pocket.
I know sometimes he's literally doing direction in the Dalek voice. But
That's absolutely
I think that's usually
scary.
for Dalek stories.
That is absolutely frightening. All right. So my thought, honestly, this story's drivel. It's well acted drivel, but it's drivel. There's a lot of things that happen just because of plot. A lot of characters that are there that don't need to be there. And they go out of the way to get these characters that don't need to be there. And the end is thin, like gruel thin. Like workhouse gruel thin. So much of it doesn't make sense that it's not funny. The actors do a great job, but I am really disappointed in Nick Briggs' writing in this. Shall we rate it?
All right, so Matt gave this a 4 out of 5.
Being very generous.
And this is hard to rate in part because it is a 3-parter. So there's a lot of elements to balance. I think I'm going to give it a 3.5.
Yeah. Okay. Alex?
Yeah, I was kind of teetering between those, and I'm going to agree with Bill, 3.5.
I can't give this higher than a 3. I cannot. I kept the first 2 episodes were just muddled and confusing. I kept hoping for a payoff, and the payoff was rail thin. And that, by the way, makes you and Alex right, Bill, because that will average it out to a 3.5, which will put this at 287 out of 412 things reviewed. It is on par with Big Finish Jubilee, Destiny of the Doctor's Death Steal, The Time Machine, Jago and Lightfoot, the Similarity Engine, Jago and Lightfoot, the Belova Devil. It is better than Jago and Lightfoot, the Bloodless Soldier, but not quite as good as Big Finish Dust Breeding.
It does seem like a lot of big finishes cluster around this area.
Yeah, they're right in that mediocre range. So there you go. 287 out of 412 things reviewed. That is all we have to say about the Ravagers.
All right, so please let us know in the YouTube or Twitch comments, what did you think of the Ninth Doctor Adventures, the Ravagers? Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to get our exports every week on YouTube, and to like the video, and of course follow us on Twitch if you want to get our streams every Tuesday night.
All right, and next week we return to spin-off land and our own pal Sarah Jane with Mona Lisa's Revenge, written by Phil Ford and starring Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith, Tommy Knight as Luke Smith, Daniel Anthony as Clyde Langer, Anjali Mohindra as Ronnie Chandra, Alexander Armstrong as Mr. Smith, and John Leeson as K9. We will see you next week.